We're doing a little bit of what it talks about in Ezekiel 33. We're sounding the warning that we're in troubled times. My goodness, we've got open borders. We've got immigration issues as a result of those open borders. I'm going to use the term, we've got radical Islam within our borders. And we've just got what the Bible called perilous times. We're in the middle of them. Now, are they going to get worse? Probably. But as I speak, things are beginning to, we're even possibly anticipating, you could turn on any news broadcast, possibly some civil disobedience at some of our political conventions this summer. Well, whoever would have thought? So we've got violence running amok, we've got lawlessness simply on overdrive, and as a result, and lots of other things we've talked about, we have these perilous times. Eric, your thoughts about the little clip we played, that your church needs to be prepared. Not every church can afford a security team.
Well, I'm in touch with a lot of churches, Jan, and the ones who have the security teams are the ones who are thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. And I think each church, no matter what size, should have at least a security person, let alone a team themselves. But to know what to do. The church that I go to has several of those gentlemen that we know who they are, and they're there watching and make sure there's no disruption and so on, let alone something really, really bad. So I think that's something that has to be in this day we live in. It's part of the times that we live in. It's part of living in these days, the days of Noah that we're in right now. These are part of the birth pangs of Matthew 24.
That's
All
right.
of what we've talked about today is really a part of that. I think every home needs some sort of a security plan too, to know where they would meet if something happened.
Good idea.
If there's a tornado or an earthquake, those kind of things. Living in the Seattle area as I have so much of my life, earthquakes are something you talk about there, not tornadoes, but in the Midwest, tornadoes, or hurricanes on the East Coast or the Gulf Coast. And so you need to have some sort of a plan in place of what you will do if you're separated from your loved ones and the communication is down. What do you do? Or what do you do in the case of home invasion? People who have thought about these things ahead have been able then to at least have a plan in place should these things happen, God forbid. Now, folks, if you're uncomfortable with any of these scenarios that I presented here, and we haven't given a lot of detail, if you're uncomfortable with any of this, think of the sheer panic that will set in if you're not prepared. And we're not here trying to sell you survival food or gas masks or anything else. But I think we need to be prepared. And I think it really starts with mental, emotional, spiritual preparation. To me, to get our thinking to line up with understanding the day we live in. That's the first thing. We're not going to prepare unless we're mentally and emotionally prepared. And of course, spiritual preparation is the thing that the world has left out of their preparation that I think is maybe the most vital of all. It is the most vital of all, to be prepared spiritually for these days.
And by the way, I just want to throw in parenthetically that I have a tremendous security team in place at my conference every year. Last fall we had at least a dozen, if not 15 or more men, mainly, rather, shall we say, muscular, running around trying to protect everybody just in case. You never know. It's a large facility, so we spend quite a lot of money on just protecting everybody who's present. Eric, here's a thought. This is a troubling thought, but I think we need to address it, even if it's just for a minute or two. But what if the government gets out of control? Do we dare talk that way?
Well, that's why we have put in place the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And at the same token, we're not advocating violence, folks. You don't want to think that's going to happen, but at some point, according to the scriptures in Revelation chapter 13, there will be a one world government, a one world system of religion, and a one world economy. How it gets there, we don't know. What kind of a part that we play in it as Americans, we don't know. But we do see that this is something coming down the pike. I don't think I'm prepared to tell people what to do in those kind of situations. But I do think as far as any kind of civil unrest or natural disaster or something like an EMP, we need to be prepared, if nothing else, like I've said now about 5 or 6 times, so that we can be the people God's called us to be at that point in time.
Well, you're exactly right, because this is when people are actually listening up. They really are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we see storm clouds coming in the west, we don't go out and put sunglasses on and sunscreen and our flip-flops and go to the beach. We prepare. We see what's coming. Well, biblically, we're seeing what's coming. In the news, we're seeing what's coming. And when you read the Bible and watch the news and see these events taking place, this isn't a time to sit back and say, gee, this is all just so wonderful. I have nothing to think about, nothing to be concerned about, and no reason to do anything. That is not the attitude we need.
I'm going back to here for just a second, and that is your statement that every individual and every individual family needs to have a plan. We referenced here briefly that the churches probably should have some kind of a security plan, but individuals and family units as well. And one of the suggestions you have in your film is having a safe room. They have them in Israel. This is why when all these rockets, thousands and thousands of rockets fall on Israel every year, perhaps not as we're speaking, but very often from Hamas, Hezbollah, you name it, and pretty soon ISIS, they have their safe room they'd run to, and there are very few casualties in Israel.
Well, when I was in Israel last November, in fact, Larry and I were both in Israel together with a number of other folks. We found out it's a cottage industry in Israel to have a safe room. It's something we don't think much of here, but we need to have, and this is, again, the bottom line, to have a plan in place and just not to turn the radio off because we don't want to hear about this because it's too much for us to take. I think preparation and I think understanding shines the light into the darkness, and so often because it feels like a dark place to us, something we don't know how to do or we don't want to comprehend, that we just let it alone. And eventually that comes back to bite us. Ignorance is never bliss. And how often we've said those kind of things. Preparing ourselves, preparing for these days we're in is vital. But joy is part of that preparation. Joy is crucial in this day. To have the joy of the Lord and to know in whom we believed and whom we trusted and know that we can trust in him until that day. If we have Jesus in our life, I mean, is there anything else more important? And God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, Paul tells Timothy in 2 Timothy 1. He's not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And to be on that mission of preaching the word and being instant and in season, out of season, and exhorting and rebuking and reproving, that's what we're called to do. So I hope people will really go away with that as the reason that we need to prepare, if nothing else, that we want to, of course, be in a position to help those around us, especially our families. We're to occupy till he comes and not give up.
And you bring out too, Eric, I've been talking to Eric Barger this entire hour, that we have a previous generation. There are a couple of generations that are a little bit soft right now. We have a grandparent generation right now who knew the Depression, who knew tough times, who knew perilous times. They even knew a war. Might not have been on our shores, but they still knew a war, and they prepared back then.
Oh, they did. When I was a little boy, my grandparents raised me. And so when I was a little boy, I remember my grandmother canned food. I mean, they weren't accustomed to be able to go to the store 24/7 whenever they wanted to. But she canned food. I know what paraffin is, Jan. And I make that statement in the video, and it's kind of a funny spot in the video because the generations between, my kids and my grandkids, they don't know what that is. And they don't have any idea about canning food and having a supply of food, those kind of things. We have become so accustomed, and as you said, soft. We are soft right now concerning these things. We need to rethink that position.